Hey everyone, how's it going? Usually when you think of Generation 1 starters, people think of Squirtle, Bulbasaur, and Charmander. But there is one more Generation 1 starter that we haven't made a video on yet, and it isn't one I'm looking forward to. Pikachu was rated 6th in our top 10 worst Pokemon to do this run, but there are quite a few commenters who weren't happy, arguing that Pikachu actually was really good and that I was underrating it. So, are they right? Let's find out, but first, let's talk about how exactly we're going to get a Pikachu starter, and this way I don't have to repeat this for every subsequent starter. Because obviously the 3 starters you don't have to do anything, you can just play the game normally. For Pikachu and the remaining Pokemon, I'm going to use Game Shark. I play everything on legitimate cartridge, so we can't just use a randomizer or something like that. Using Game Shark isn't too bad. There's a simple code and you just put in the number of the Pokemon corresponding to their index number. Now, to record the footage for the runs and why I'm able to get these crazy color palettes, I use the Retron 5 clone console. You can't use the Game Shark on that, so I just use my Game Boy player, which is a GameCube peripheral, which is why the color scheme is now what you'd expect, red, as opposed to the ugly yellow color that we're going to use for the rest of the run because, well, Pikachu is yellow, and honestly, I like the variety of colors. I think it's kind of cool that every video is going to look a little bit different. Anyway, there was another debate whether or not I should just maximize DVs with another Game Shark cheat, which I figured out how to do, or just reset until I get one that's good enough. I'm going to stick with resetting until one is good enough. Pokemon is a game of luck. I understand people want to make this more scientific, but if I'm only doing one run, it's never going to be scientific. I want this to at least be indicative of what a typical Pikachu run would be. And if you reset for decent enough stats, for example, Pikachu with a 12 attack has 15, which is perfect DVs in attack. So you can reset for that, and I did. And it only took me around 8 minutes to get a Pikachu that I thought was good enough. Is it a perfect Pikachu? No, but the chances of getting a perfect Pikachu is like 1 in 65,000. And to me, that's just so unrealistic. Yes, it may skew the results a little bit, but never are you going to get a terrible Pokemon because I'm resetting. So anyway, after I'm done resetting, I can use the Retron 5 again. I do speed it up. People get upset about this. And I've mentioned it before, I've never hidden it. Listen, at the end of the day, I could either do it at regular speed, and these videos could take a week, or I could speed it up to 3-4 times, which, by the way, Pokemon Stadium 2 also lets me do. I used to use that, I just think the footage looks a lot cleaner on the Retron. That's the only reason I use it, and it saves tons of time. And honestly, the fact there is a Pokemon licensed game out there that lets you do the same thing, I'm pretty comfortable with speeding the game up and making videos faster. So, figured I would just get that out of the way. Anyway, this is a long introduction, but we're not going to get to Brock anytime soon because we have a problem. Pikachu, unlike our other Pokemon, doesn't have a move that can hit Brock. And I don't mean hit it and do a lot of damage, I mean Pikachu literally cannot damage Brock until level 16. So, we can battle all the 3 bug catchers in Viridian Forest. We can battle, we'll call him Rival 1A, because Rival 2 I've always referred to the one in Cerulean, but I never battle the Viridian City rival. Here, we need the experience points. Obviously, I should have mentioned that I made Rival pick Bulbasaur because both Blastoise and Charizard are weak to electric attacks, so I figured Venusaur was the fairest choice for making the rival as difficult as possible. He's not too difficult to defeat, nor any of the bug catchers, but we're going to have to fight a whole bunch of Weedle and Kakuna, which brings me to why I used Red version. There is a subtle difference in the stats of Caterpie and Weedle, and the way stat experience works, which influences your stats, is the base stats of the Pokemon you knock out are added to your stats. It's a complicated formula, don't worry too much about it, but it makes a bit of a difference getting to knock out Weedle. So anytime I need to grind for attack before Brock, you're going to see me using Red version versus Blue version, so there is an actual difference. Anyway, once you're at level 16, you can try battling the Junior Trainer, and I did defeat him on my first try. You're not guaranteed to because Sandshrew likes to spam Sand Attack. Unfortunately, Brock is another story. I figured I'd have to grind quite a bit till I was ready to face Brock. It's not like there's anything super useful coming up. I mean, Swift eventually we would get, but we're going to have to deal physical, not very effective damage to Brock. And the strategy would probably be growl a few times then use quick attack, right? But no, actually the best strategy is to just use quick attack right away and hope Brock doesn't use defense curl. Because around level 20, you actually deal pretty significant damage, and that's because of all the Weedles we've knocked out. We've gained some pretty significant stat experience, and because we reset for a Pikachu with max attack DVs, we're not too terrible in attack. And if you get decently lucky, you'll get past the Geodude. The Onix is pretty much entirely luck. Onix has 3 moves. Tackle, we do not want. Bide, we do want. Screech, Screech is okay. But basically, because we outspeed the Onix, we can safely use Quick Attack. Bide in Generation 1 doesn't have increased priority. So we can use Quick Attack. When Onix uses Bide, we simply use Growl or Thundershock, and then just rinse and repeat. You can be at very low health because Onix really doesn't like to attack, but obviously it could attack every turn if it wanted to, so it's largely a matter of luck. Shockingly, level 19 was all I needed to get past it. Sure, I didn't get attacked almost at all with the Onix, so it was pretty lucky, but the fact of the matter is, there's really nothing more strategic you can even do, and leveling up 1 or 2 levels isn't going to make a huge difference. I do love consistency, but when it comes to these kind of fights with Brock, if I just win and I'm trying my best, I'm going to go with it. I'm celebrating. I think this is great. And after you beat Brock, the game gets really easy because of course it does. We're at a way higher level than we were before. And electric Pokemon, something you'll realize in Generation 1, there aren't a whole lot of ground Pokemon. I mean, Brock is an obvious exception, but there aren't many that you face. Most things don't resist electric attacks. So Pikachu kind of just mows through all the Pidgey and Caterpie and all the other Pokemon you face. There's really no difficulty. Misty actually was a little difficult. Of course, I just used Thundershock. The reason I say she was a little difficult is I probably should have done Misty later because her Starmie outsped me. I didn't expect that. And because of that, I actually got a little lucky to win, although also unlucky. Misty never used Bubble Beam, which was lucky. She did get a critical hit, which is unlucky, but I got a critical hit, which was lucky. But I also had the foresight not to remove Quick Attack, even though I have Mega Punch, since, well, what if I get outsped? I knew it wouldn't happen much, but just in case, let's have Quick Attack, and worked out pretty well. Truth be told, if I ever did this again, I would fight Misty after the Rival, because Rival 2 is way easier than in other runs since we have a Pokemon that's super effective against Pidgeotto, not as many chances to use Sand Attack. I mean, of course, it still got off 2 against me in this fight because why wouldn't it? And it made the fight a lot more stressful than it otherwise should have been. I one-shot the Abra with a Quick Attack and the Rattata with the Thundershock, although that may have been luck. Not sure if it would have been a one-shot without the critical hit. Regardless, I ended up actually getting a Mega Punch to hit the Bulbasaur. I was pretty worried because I'd had quite a few defense drops, and Leech Seed wouldn't have been great. And shortly after, I got a Quick Attack to hit. So, I would say average luck. 2 Sand Attacks is unlucky, but didn't hurt me too much. So, probably best just to fight the Rival first in the future. Whatever, live and learn. The rest of the fights are not too bad. Even the Hiker you have to fight, because he just has 1 Onix, you can just spam Mega Punch. Onix kinda sucks, so it's not really a big deal. Something that will make these fights easier that I can't get right now is the TM for Seismic Toss, which is available very soon, but I'm not gonna get it right now. The reason being, you have to fight another Hiker in order to make the junior trainer move enough spaces so that you can walk past him and get Seismic Toss. We are going to get it, but just later once we have cut. Just not worth it to fight another Hiker. Anyway, we're going to head down to Vermilion City once we get the SS ticket, beat the Rocket. We don't get Dig, which sucks. I love using Dig, such a great move. Fight some more trainers and head to the SSN where we're going to get Body Slam. Always useful when we can use it. And we're then going to fight Rival number 3. And once again, a difficult fight in other runs. First try success. Thundershock almost one-shot the Pidgeotto and it didn't use Sand Attack. Very good. Raticate did get Quick Attack, and I didn't one-shot it, but I still have quick attack, so I was able to retaliate and knock it out. Single body slam knocked out the Kadabra, and only 2 body slams for the Ivysaur. Used Vine Whip, didn't do much damage. Pretty good, so that's 3 fights that have taken many attempts. The first try with Pikachu. And this is really starting to shock me, like holy moly. This run's going really well. I'm even making up some time from other runs despite the fact I spent 2 hours on Brock. Lieutenant Surge is also really easy. You just use Body Slam a whole bunch. Usually I skip Lieutenant Surge for later, and you could theoretically, but you shouldn't. We need Lieutenant Surge to get Thunderbolt, because once we have Thunderbolt, we have arguably the best electric attack in the game after the 3rd gym for the entirety of the game. Think how long it took for us to get Flamethrower Surf, or how Razor Leaf wasn't guaranteed to be a critical hit, so it wasn't quite as good. We have a base 95 power attack that isn't resisted by very much for a lot of the game. I didn't realize how much this speeds things up. And there aren't any real difficult trainers coming up until in Rock Tunnel. We do have that one mandatory hiker. I skip all the hikers I can. You can skip almost all of them. But you do have to fight one of them who has the 2 Geodudes and the Graveler. Now, with Seismic Toss, it's just a 2-hit KO, but they like to use Self-Destruct, and you'll only survive one of them. It doesn't matter if it's the Graveler or the Geodude, you can only take one Self-Destruct. I got the Graveler to Self-Destruct, which is fine. I don't even know if it would have been a 2-shot with Seismic Toss. It's hard to tell sometimes, but works well enough for me. Only one more mandatory trainer, and she's really easy, and then we can make our way to Celadon City. After buying a couple proteins, which in retrospect probably should have been calcium, but doesn't matter, I went to the Rocket Hideout and fought Giovanni. And for the first time in a while, it was not a first try success, only because I ran out of power points. Little minor thing, rather than catch an Oddish, which you may notice I have, I should get a Paris so I could teach it Dig, because it allows me to escape and then I could heal at the Pokemon Center. It would save me time. The only reason I lost to Giovanni is I didn't have enough power points or HP to beat him, because he's really not that bad. I did learn, however, that Submission, one of the best fighting moves in Generation 1, just doesn't work for Pikachu. You have that 20% chance to miss, and you take back a ton of recoil damage. Oftentimes it's not a 1-hit KO anyway because rock Pokemon have such good defense. So it's best just to use Seismic Toss, and a good example is the successful fight against Giovanni. 2 Seismic Tosses was enough to defeat his Onix, took 3 for the Rhyhorn, then the Kangaskhan. Obviously I'd love to use Thunderbolt, but I ran out of power points, so I had to rely on some body slams. Didn't matter. Kangaskhan loves to use Rage, and Rage is a terrible attack. Once you use it, you're locked into it for the rest of the fight. There's actually a soft block that can occur because of this. Very notable one in Laurely, but whatever. Honestly, should have been first try, but I was experimenting with Submission. Submission doesn't make sense. Okay, now we're gonna go and fight rival number 4. We could face Erica, but rival 4. And he's not very difficult. In fact, every single one of his Pokemon is a 1-hit KO except for the Ivysaur, which does basically no damage and takes 2 body slams. Not too bad, but you may notice I have Agility. Now, a lot of people recommended using Withdraw on Squirtle, and it's not a bad idea. I've mentioned this in the past, but there is a mechanic in Generation 1, well, it's actually a glitch, but you can't really avoid it, where when you raise your stats, badge boosts, which are increases of 12% you get after acquiring certain badges, will be reapplied every time your stats are modified. With Squirtle, it didn't make a ton of sense because I needed all the moves I had. Surf, Ice Beam, Body Slam, Dig, they all served useful purposes. Pikachu's a lot more limited, so we can use one of our move slots for Agility, and it will come in handy a little bit later. For now, we're just gonna keep rolling through the game. The hardest fight is actually the Marowak because it has Bone Club, so that can be a little scary. Thankfully, wild Pokemon have completely random AI, so it's not likely to use that twice. Nothing else too difficult until we get to Koga. Koga actually is kind of challenging. His Pokemon have good defense and good special, plus they can poison you and stuff, so I actually left Koga for a little bit later because I was having trouble figuring out a consistent way to get by him. I also was having trouble with Erica, who unsurprisingly resists my attacks, and her Pokemon are decently strong, so I decided to go to Sylph Company and to grind a bit of experience points there, because Pikachu's electric attacks deal well against the Golbats. Even the Hypnos and whatnot, they're usually 1 or 2 hit KO, and there's a lot of evolved Pokemon, so we're gaining quite a bit of experience points, plus there's some useful items I can pick up along the way, and once I've gained enough experience points, I go back to Erica since I kinda also need to fight her, and at my current level, she's not too much of a problem at all. All her Pokemon are 2-hit KOs, but thankfully, I paralyze the Victory Bell and it doesn't move. Tangela uses Bind, but 2 Seismic Toss is no problem, and the Vileplume decides Poison Powder is the best idea, not Petal Dance, whatever. Wasn't too big a deal. At a bit of a lower level, there was a little bit more luck, and I figured for Koga I needed some more levels anyway. Definitely could have figured out a strategy earlier, but sometimes it's just not worth it to just try and get past it at a lower level because you're going to just get stuck later anyway. I could see Koga was going to be a problem, so might as well have a more consistent Erica fight. I'm still not ready to face Koga yet, but I am ready to face Rival Fivel. So let's go fight him. He's really not so bad at my current level. Pidgeotto and Gyarados are still 1-hit KOs. Growlithe isn't. I did get burned one time, that was bad, but normally isn't a problem. Alakazam, you want to use Body Slam because of its great special and its horrible defense. And then Venusaur, honestly this is the first time I'd gotten that far, so I alternated between Body Slam and Seismic Toss. Generally speaking, if Seismic Toss is doing as much damage as another attack, it's better to use the other attack because it could crit, or you get a lucky status. Anyway, Venusaur didn't use Razor Leaf. If it did, that would have been problematic, but it decided not to. I'm not weak to grass, so it's just going to kind of randomly attack me. Definitely a heck of a lot harder than the previous rival fights, but not terrible. And that's kind of how I'd also describe Giovanni. I'm not super over leveled, so I'm not dealing as much damage as I'd like. I also used Body Slam against the Kangaskhan instead of just using Thunderbolt, not sure why. But I used Seismic Toss against the Rhyhorn and the Nidoqueen, basically because at my level, Nidoqueen's defense is good enough that Seismic Toss actually deals more damage. Thankfully, all his Pokemon have bad attacks, but if they didn't, this would be a really tricky fight. Pikachu does not match up well at all against the Pokemon he has, but thankfully, in Red and Blue, a lot of trainers just have terrible, terrible attacks, and I'm able to take full advantage of that and win, so not bad. And you'd figure now it's time to go fight Koga, but I'm already in Saffron, let's go fight Sabrina. And my original strategy was to use Agility a few times to get attack boosts via the Badge Boost glitch. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out in this fight because I level up after I knock out the Venomoth. Once you level up, the Badge Boost glitch wears off and you just get the 12.5% you're supposed to get from the start of the battle. Anyway, you just use Body Slam. Pretty much every Pokemon was a 2-hit KO, and I was taking pretty significant damage. Wasn't thinking this was going to be a victory, but Alakazam did use Reflect. I decided to chance it with a Seismic Toss, and I dealt enough damage, so second try on Sabrina. So the game's getting a little bit harder, but overall, these fights are really not so bad. I mean, consider how much higher a level I was at in some of my other runs. This is looking pretty good. And finally, it's time to fight Koga because he's the only accessible gym left to us at this point. And this fight had some of the craziest good luck I've gotten in a really long time. I didn't get the range against the first Coughing, but it missed. I got a critical hit against the Muck. I got the range I needed against the second Coughing, and Koga spammed X attacks on the Wheezing, so I made it past him without taking any damage. That just didn't feel right to me. I mean, this has been a really tough fight, so I decided to fight Koga again, and I won in an even more ridiculous way. Here the Coughing did hit with Tackle. I didn't get a critical hit, but the Muck did, and it poisoned me. I still got the range against the Coughing, and the Wheezing decided to spam X attacks, plus I got a crit. You know what? With 90 base speed, there is around 20% chance for critical hits. I don't know. You know, at some point, just take it. So I did, and I moved on to fight Blaine. Now here's where I made a mistake. Actually, I made a couple mistakes, but Blaine gives you the badge that boosts your special. So I tried to set up 3 agilities. I actually misclick and set up a 4th in order to boost my special to make Blaine easier. Little did I know, he's the badge I need to get for that to work. So I was literally boosting every other stat but special. He's still fine, I just spammed Thunderbolt. Eventually I kind of figured it out and used Body Slam, but it wasn't dealing any more damage, so I just stuck to Thunderbolt. I got a crit against the Arcanine, but that's not even lucky considering how many times I've attacked. It was statistically probable I got at least one critical hit. I'm just going to take it at this point. It was my second attempt, and I'd even manipulated my experience points so I wouldn't level up. And then I see the Volcano badge raises special, so yeah, brilliant move, me. Live and learn, let's go fight Giovanni, and this time he's going to be a lot easier, because I'm going to change things up a little bit. I'm going to get rid of Body Slam. Yeah, it served me well, but time to move on and teach Mimic. Why? Well, Rhyhorn doesn't like to attack, and it only has Stomp, so I can set up 3 Agility, or 4. Once again, by the way, that does nothing to set up a 4th, it's just me misclicking. I can use Seismic Toss to get rid of the Rhyhorn, then mimic the Doug Trio and teach myself Dig. The Doug Trio will go for Dig, but I can Dig to avoid its Dig, and then hit it with Dig and hit everything else with Dig, and if I'd manipulated my experience points properly, I would have one-shot the rest of his team. Of course, I still didn't think about that, so I leveled up after the Nidoqueen, causing the Nidoking to be a little more stressful and it be a 2-hit KO. Thankfully, the Rhydon uses Fissure, because Fissure equals Ground Move. Super effective, right? But it won't work. Fissure cannot affect a Pokemon whose speed stat is higher than its. Well, with all those agilities and the fact I'm a Pikachu, my speed stat is definitely higher. So while it does take 3 digs, and I definitely misspoke earlier, it would have been a 2-hit KO. Regardless, easy fight, first try, we're moving on to the last part of the game. And while the rival had not been difficult, or at least that difficult up to this point, now that he has all his Pokemon evolved and better moves, he becomes insanely difficult. Plus, I don't have Body Slam, which would be very useful. So, I tried a lot of different things until I realized that this was the moment I should use my rare candies. I mean, I could try and figure out some strategy, but listen, the game's only going to get harder. We're at a pretty low level. We're a Pikachu. This was supposed to be the 6th hardest. This fight is taking too long. I lost like 6 times in a row. Pretty good indicator that it's time just to use the rare candies and see if I can then create a better strategy, which I did. Thankfully, Pidgeot does not have Sand Attack, so we can safely set up all 3 agility, and we just use a rare candy, so we're not going to level up in this fight. We can knock it out in a single hit with a Thunderbolt, same with the Gyarados, and same with the Growlithe, and the Rhyhorn takes a few Seismic Toss, but it's not a problem either. The Alakazam, I'd love to use Body Slam. Instead, we're going to use Mimic and teach ourselves Psychic and hope we don't get hit with a critical hit because it's a 2-hit KO for Thunderbolt. And even with our boosted special via the badge boost glitch, it is not a 1-hit KO with Psychic for Venusaur. Thankfully, the rival uses a potion. Why does it even have a potion? Whatever, I beat the Venusaur, but I can already tell, if I'm having this much trouble with rival second last, the final rival fight is going to be really tough. But before I can even start thinking about that, I gotta think about the Elite Four. And I'm honestly not too worried, at least at the beginning. I actually didn't fight any trainers in Victory Road. I kind of figured initially that my type matchup was good enough that I should be able to breeze through. That ended up not being the case entirely. There were a couple of obstacles that I had to figure out, but we are going to start at a much lower level than the previous 2 runs, which is honestly pretty exciting. I mean, no one likes being wrong, but holy moly, is this going so much better than I could have imagined. Nonetheless, the Elite Four still was very challenging. I don't want to mislead you. It took me about a couple hours of planning, trying different strategies to figure out how to make it all work. But unlike in other runs, while I did need to level up a little bit, I think 4 more levels from what you last saw, the success came from finding better strategies to get by each member of the Elite Four, as opposed to just leveling up past all my problems. And that's the way I like doing these. That's the whole point of these runs. So let's talk about the strategies I used. For now, we're going to keep our moveset the same, and Lorelei actually is really easy, and this really shouldn't come as much of a surprise considering 4 of her 5 Pokemon are water types. Dugong is usually a 2-hit KO unless you get a critical hit. Cloyster is a 1-hit KO, and then Slowbro, you want to mimic Amnesia. You don't have to do this, it just makes the fight a little bit more consistent and could save you a potion. After 1 Amnesia, the rest of her team are 1-hit KOs usually. Jinx, there's actually a slim chance could survive, so maybe just use a second Amnesia. You can get by this battle without any Amnesias. I just like not losing health and saving a potion just because it looks cooler. But the fact is, Lorelei is pretty easy, as is Bruno. All you need to do is use 2 Seismic Tosses against both Onix. Thunderbolt, 1-hit KOs, both Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee, critical hits don't matter. Machamp can knock you out if you're at 100 health or lower, and it hits you with submission or gets a critical hit with submission at any health. It's not likely to use it because Fissure is super effective, quote unquote, and sometimes it just uses an item or Leer. It's really not too big a problem. I fought Bruno maybe 25 times and I lost exactly once, and that was where I didn't heal between fights and went in with like no health. So yeah, not a difficult fight at all. Agatha, she's not difficult, she's always annoying, but thankfully I remembered my minimum battles run, the first one where I used Venusaur, and how I had a pretty good strategy for dealing with her, and it worked so well there, might as well figure out how to make it work here. I did need to manipulate my experience points for this fight to make sure this would work, but what I do is I mimic Hypnosis, use Hypnosis, then try and set up 3 Agility. This is important, I need all 3. The Gengar will then become a 2-hit KO, and I'm not going to level up in this fight. Golbat's a 1-hit KO, I didn't need any Agilities for that. The Haunter is a 2-hit KO, but you could sometimes knock it within range for a Super Potion. That's ideal. You really don't want Hypnosis to hit or Confuse Ray. Not the end of the world, I've had both those things happen in one. I usually do win this fight, but those are annoying. We actually use the Agilities for the next 2 Pokemon though. Arbok can use Glare. That's a run ender, don't want that. With the 3 Agilities, it's a 1-hit KO at my current level. And then Gengar, we're not going to use a Hypnosis because the worst it can do is Confuse Ray, which is only a 50-50 chance of actually being bad, and that's still not a run ender. Hypnosis has a 40% chance to miss, plus if I got a critical hit or a paralysis it could be good, and it's a 2-hit KO. Another reason we use those Agilities, and this fight definitely took me a really long time to figure out. It's why I don't use real time, because that's just a matter of me not thinking about it quickly enough. And Agatha could be a run ender. She's definitely tougher than the previous 2, but realistically, Lance was a much bigger problem, as you could expect. I ended up making Lance a lot easier as well once I figured something out, but the truth is, had I leveled up more, Lance would have been super easy. Let me explain. So Pikachu doesn't really have any great moves for dealing with Dragon Pokemon. We have an Electric move, Seismic Toss, and Mimic. We're going to keep Agility. I actually had taught Reflect earlier, thinking that would help, but Agility helps quite a bit more. We're going to 1-hit KO the Gyarados with Thunderbolt, because that's really dangerous. And then we're going to need Dragonair number 1 to cooperate. The idea is to mimic Hyper Beam and set up 3 Agility to boost our attack. This is important because that will allow at our current level Hyper Beam to 1-hit KO both Dragonair, which is super useful. And in Generation 1, when Hyper Beam knocks out a Pokemon, you don't need to recharge. The Dragonair can critical hit you, and that happened a few times, and that would end the run. So I still classify a Lance as not perfect, but as you can see, I've knocked out the 2 Dragonair with Hyper Beam. Aerodactyl, I use a Thunderbolt and it 1-hit KOs it. And here's why it's not perfect. Look at the health I'm at and Dragonite. You'd think all Dragonite has to do is use Hyper Beam and I'm done. And in later generations, the AI would know to do that, but in Gen 1, it doesn't. So here it used Slam, and that was perfect because it was a 2-hit KO. The Agilities worked really well. Again, with the experience point manipulation, I don't level up, and so I'm able to keep those special boosts. It also likes to spam Barrier and Reflect. Hyper Beam I don't think would have one-shot it, and if it didn't, then I would have to recharge, so I just go for Thunderbolt to be safe. Definitely not the most consistent strategy I've ever used, but who cares? We're on pace to break Bulbasaur's record with the 6th worst Pokemon to do this? What? Who would have thunk this? The rival, however, is very challenging. I mean very. I got to the rival many times. Trying to figure out how to get past him was very difficult, and I am going to need to use badge boosts, so I am going to level up, and that will cost me the record, but allow me to maybe have a chance in this battle. Once again, we're going to set up against the Pidgeot because it can't do very much to us, but shockingly, we're going to mimic Sky Attack. I never, ever use Sky Attack on flying Pokemon. Who would use a 2-turn attack? But with my current move pool, it is the best option. We're also going to set up 3 agilities, of course, and then knock out the Pidgeot with a Thunderbolt. It will be a one-hit KO, and you shouldn't be taking too much damage. Unfortunately, Thunderbolt will not one-hit KO the Alakazam, and so you have 2 options. Either use Sky Attack or try for 2 Thunderbolts. Probably should have gone for 2 Thunderbolts in retrospect. I'm not sure why I went for Sky Attack, but hey, I got to use Sky Attack in a run. Alakazam, very annoying. Loves to critical hit, confuse with Psybeam. Ugh, like, I had so many runs end at Alakazam. I love using Alakazam, but hate facing it. Now, we kept Seismic Toss solely for this Rhydon. It's going to take 4 Seismic Toss, and you'd think Rhydon could help by using Tail Whip or Leer to lower my defense, help with badge boosts, and if it hits with enough of those, it will. However, it does have Fury Attack, so it'll deal damage, and we do need our defense not being terrible for a later Pokemon. So, ideally, you just get rid of Rhydon as quick as possible. I wish I had a better way, other than obviously if I leveled up a little bit more, Seismic Toss would do just a little bit more damage. It'd be a 3-hit KO, but we're going to tie the record if we do this. Gyarados, 1-hit KO with Thunderbolt. Arcanine is scary. That's why I don't want too many Leers. Takedown can deal significant damage. I get a Roar. Thankfully, with the agility boost, it's a 2-hit KO with Thunderbolt, and we have 1 Pokemon remaining. All we needed to do was anything but a critical hit Razor Leaf. Oh my god. Now we just need Sky Attack to hit, and we have done it. Pikachu ties Bulbasaur, beating the entire game at level 69. Took it to level 20 to get past Brock, but the rest of the game truly was one of the easier runs. I mean, of 4, but I'm in shock. I did not see this coming. I thought this would be a very annoying run. I really underestimated how few rock Pokemon there are, how good Seismic Toss is at just getting rid of them, and how we can be creative with Mimic to make up for move pool deficiencies. That list is totally going to get revised, and while it took about half an hour longer than Bulbasaur, we still managed to beat the game at the same level, which begs the question, who is the best Kanto starter if we count Pikachu? I still think Bulbasaur should be number 1. Just the fights, yes, some of them were trickier, but once you figure out a strategy, they are a little bit more consistent. I think Pikachu would be in the same tier as Bulbasaur, with Charmander a tier below, and then Squirtle in another tier. I really do feel like that seems accurate, but it's hard to make an accurate tier list with so few entries. And that just means you're going to have to come back in 2 or 3 days, hopefully subscribed, we're trying to hit 200,000, and see what Pokemon comes next. Not necessarily going to go in Pokedex order. I'm probably going to do like a bunch of rivalries like Fossil versus Fossil, version exclusives, which ones are better, all sorts of fun stuff like that. It'll be great. So I'll probably figure out which Pokemon I feel like doing after I make this video, and you'll find out when you see it on your notifications, hopefully. So thanks for watching. Take care, everyone.